I refused to give my inheritance to my gambling addict brother-in-law, so my family tried to contest my grandfather's will. Years later, they want to reconcile, but I drop a bombshell that changes everything. I, 28F, have always had a complicated relationship with my family, especially my older sister, Megan, 34F. Growing up in a small town in Ohio, our childhood was marked by stark contrasts. Megan was the golden child. She excelled in school, was captain of the cheerleading squad, and seemed to effortlessly win our parents' approval. I, on the other hand, struggled academically and socially, often feeling like I was living in Megan's shadow. Our parents, particularly our mom, didn't help the situation. Mom was a high school teacher, and she took great pride in Megan's academic achievements. She'd often compare us, saying things like, "Why can't you be more like your sister?" Or, "Megan never struggled with math like this." Dad, a quiet accountant, rarely intervened in these comparisons, which only made me feel more isolated. I vividly remember one incident when I was 12 and Megan was 18. I had worked hard on a science project about local ecology, spending weeks collecting samples and creating a detailed presentation. The night before it was due, Megan casually mentioned that she had won the state science fair with a similar project years ago. Mom immediately insisted on helping me improve my project to match Megan's standard. They stayed up all night, essentially redoing my entire project. I was devastated, feeling like my hard work meant nothing. Despite these challenges, I worked hard to forge my own path. I discovered a passion for design and started doing small freelance jobs in high school. My parents dismissed it as a hobby, but I saw potential for a real career. After graduation, while Megan went off to a prestigious university on a full scholarship, I decided to skip college and focus on building my design business. This decision caused a huge rift in our family. Mom was furious, saying I was throwing my life away. Dad, while not as vocal, made it clear he was disappointed. Only my grandfather, Pop, supported my decision. He had been a small business owner himself and saw the entrepreneurial spirit in me that my parents missed. The next few years were tough. I worked long hours, took every job I could get, and slowly built a client base. My parents' disapproval hung over me like a cloud. They'd make snide comments about how I could still enroll in community college, or how Megan was thriving in her corporate job after graduation. Pop was my rock during this time, always encouraging me and even giving me a small loan to upgrade my equipment when I desperately needed it. Slowly but surely, my business began to take off. By my mid-20s, I had a thriving graphic design company with several employees. I was making more money than I ever thought possible. But even then, it felt like my success paled in comparison to Megan's in my family's eyes. Megan had followed the perfect path: college, corporate job, marriage to her high school sweetheart Jake at 25, and 2 kids by 30. Every family gathering was dominated by talk of Megan's latest promotion or her kids' achievements. My business successes were treated as lucky breaks rather than the result of hard work. My relationship with my parents and Megan has been strained but cordial as adults. We see each other a few times a year for holidays and family events, but aren't particularly close. I've tried to maintain a relationship with my niece and nephew, but it's been challenging with the underlying family tension. A few months ago, Pop passed away. He was 85 and had been battling cancer for years, but it still hit me hard. He was always supportive of me and believed in my potential, even when my parents didn't. Losing him felt like losing my biggest cheerleader. To my surprise, Pop left me a significant inheritance in his will, about $500,000. My parents and Megan received much smaller amounts, around $50,000 each. I was stunned by Pop's generosity and touched that he believed in me so much. At first, my family congratulated me, albeit somewhat stiffly. But soon after, Megan called me in tears. She confessed that she and Jake were drowning in debt. Apparently, Jake had a gambling addiction he'd hidden from everyone, including Megan until recently. They were on the verge of losing their house and possibly headed for divorce. Megan begged me to give her my inheritance to help them get back on their feet. She said I owed it to her as her sister, and that our kids, I don't have any yet, are cousins who should look out for each other. She brought up times from our childhood when she had helped me, like when she convinced some girls to stop bullying me in middle school. My parents quickly joined in, pressuring me to do the right thing and help Megan's family. Mom called me daily, oscillating between guilt-tripping and angry tirades. She said things like, "How can you be so selfish when your sister's family is suffering? And Pop would be so disappointed in you." I was stunned and upset by their request. This inheritance meant so much to me, both financially and emotionally, as a gift from Pop. I had worked hard for years with little support from my family, and Pop's belief in me had kept me going through the toughest times. Now that I finally had this windfall, they expected me to just hand it over. After much thought, I told Megan I was sorry for her situation, but that I wouldn't be giving her my inheritance. I offered to loan her a smaller amount, around $50,000, to help with immediate expenses, but she refused, saying they needed the full amount to dig out of their hole. My parents are furious with me. They've called me selfish and heartless, saying I'm abandoning my sister in her time of need. Mom has started bringing up every sacrifice she and Dad ever made for me, as if that entitles them to decide what I do with my inheritance. Megan won't speak to me now and has apparently been bad-mouthing me to our extended family. Even some cousins and aunts have reached out to guilt me about my decision. I feel terrible about Megan's situation, but I don't think it's fair for them to expect this of me after years of favoring her. Pop chose to leave me this money, and I want to honor his wishes. I have plans for the money. I want to expand my business, buy a house, and set aside some for my own future kids' education. But the guilt and family pressure are really getting to me. Am I the asshole for refusing to give up my inheritance? Should I sacrifice my own plans to bail out my sister's family? I'm torn between standing my ground and keeping the peace with my family. Update 1. It's been about a month since my last post, and the situation with my family has only gotten worse. A week after I refused to give Megan my inheritance, my parents showed up unannounced at my house. They spent hours trying to convince me to change my mind, alternating between guilt-tripping and anger. My mom even brought up childhood incidents where Megan had helped or defended me, implying I owed her for that. One story she kept repeating was from when I was 14 and Megan was 20. I had been caught shoplifting a lipstick from the mall, a stupid mistake I made trying to fit in with the cool girls at school. Megan, home from college for the summer, had convinced our parents not to ground me for life. Mom acted like this one incident meant I owed Megan everything for the rest of my life. I stood my ground, reminding them of all the times I had been overlooked or dismissed in favor of Megan. I brought up the science fair incident, which Mom waved off as ancient history. When I mentioned how they had never supported my business, Dad actually had the audacity to say they were just trying to protect me from failure. The conversation went in circles for hours, leaving me emotionally drained. Things escalated when I found out my parents had given Megan and Jake access to their retirement savings to help with their debt. They didn't tell me directly. I heard it from my aunt. Apparently, they've significantly compromised their own financial security to bail out Megan and Jake. I was furious that they'd do this while simultaneously pressuring me to give up my inheritance. When I confronted them, they claimed they had no choice as parents. They accused me of forcing them into this position by being selfish with Pop's money. Mom even said, "If you had just done the right thing, we wouldn't have had to risk our retirement." The family dynamic has become incredibly toxic. Megan has been spreading her side of the story to everyone who will listen, painting me as a greedy, uncaring sister. She's been posting vague, passive-aggressive statuses on social media about family loyalty and true colors. Some relatives have taken her side, while others are staying out of it entirely. I've started getting harassing messages on social media from Megan's friends, calling me horrible names and saying I'm tearing the family apart. Some have even threatened to expose me, though I'm not sure what they think they have on me. I've had to block several people and increase my privacy settings. The situation has started affecting my business. A longtime client, who it turns out is friends with my mom, abruptly canceled a big project. She didn't say it was because of the family drama, but the timing seems suspicious. I'm worried about how much damage this could do to my reputation in our relatively small community. My boyfriend, Alex, 30M, has been incredibly supportive through all of this. He's encouraged me to stand firm in my decision and has been a buffer against some of the family drama. He's even offered to talk to my parents himself, though I'm hesitant to drag him into this mess. However, the stress is definitely taking a toll on our relationship. We had planned to get engaged soon, but now we're hesitant to move forward while this situation is ongoing. The idea of planning a wedding without my family there, or worse, with them there but causing drama, is heartbreaking. I'm struggling with feelings of guilt and anger. Part of me wants to cave just to make the pressure stop. I lie awake at night wondering if I'm making a huge mistake that will cost me my family forever. But a larger part feels resentful that my family thinks they're entitled to my inheritance, especially given our history. I've started seeing a therapist to help process everything. She's helping me set boundaries and deal with the emotional fallout. But it's hard not to feel like I'm losing my entire family over this. I'm considering taking a step back from all family contact for a while to protect my mental health. But I'm worried that will only make things worse in the long run. Megan's kids' birthdays are coming up, and I don't know if I should send gifts or if that would be seen as trying to buy their affection. I feel stuck between standing up for myself and potentially losing my family forever. Every day brings a new wave of guilt, anger, and doubt. I find myself wondering what Pop would think of all this. Would he be proud of me for standing my ground, or disappointed that his gift has caused such a rift in the family? Update 2. It's been 2 months since my last update, and the situation has taken some unexpected turns. About 3 weeks ago, I received a call from Jake, my brother-in-law. He was clearly distressed and asked if we could meet in person to talk. Against my better judgment, I agreed. When we met at a local coffee shop, Jake broke down and confessed that things were even worse than Megan had let on. Not only was he dealing with a gambling addiction, but he'd also embezzled money from his company to cover his debts. He was facing potential criminal charges and was desperate for help. Jake shared more details about how they'd gotten into this mess. It had started small, a few bets here and there, nothing major. But over time, it spiraled out of control. He'd maxed out their credit cards, taken out personal loans, and even borrowed money from loan sharks. When that wasn't enough, he started skimming from his company's accounts, thinking he could replace it before anyone noticed. He admitted that Megan had known about the gambling for a while, but had been in denial about how bad it was. She'd been covering for him, making excuses to family and friends about why they couldn't afford things. The embezzlement, though, was news to her too. Jake begged me to reconsider giving them the inheritance money. He said it was their only hope of avoiding bankruptcy and him going to jail. He swore he'd get help for his addiction and make things right if I just gave them this chance. I was shocked by the extent of their troubles, but still hesitant to give up my inheritance. I couldn't help but think of all the times my family had dismissed my struggles while putting Megan on a pedestal. And now they expected me to clean up this mess? After much internal debate, I decided to offer a compromise. I told Jake I would be willing to loan them $100,000 from my inheritance with a formal agreement for repayment. I also insisted that both he and Megan attend counseling and addiction treatment as a condition of the loan. Jake was grateful for the offer, but said Megan might not accept it. He was right. When Megan found out about our meeting and my offer, she was furious. She accused Jake of going behind her back and me of trying to control them with stipulations. She said if I really cared, I'd give them the full amount with no strings attached. The situation exploded into a huge family argument. My parents sided with Megan, saying my offer was insulting and that families shouldn't have formal loan agreements. They continued to insist I should give them the full amount, no strings attached. Mom even accused me of enjoying watching Megan suffer, bringing up petty fights from our teenage years as proof of my resentment. In the midst of this chaos, I received surprising support from an unexpected source, my aunt, my mom's sister. She reached out to tell me she thought I was being more than generous with my offer and that my parents and Megan were out of line. My aunt revealed that this wasn't the first time Megan and Jake had financial troubles. Apparently, they'd borrowed significant amounts from other family members over the years, always with sob stories and promises to repay that never materialized. She told me about loaning them $20,000 for home repairs a few years ago, only to find out later they'd used it to pay off gambling debts. They'd never paid her back. This information has made me even more resolute in my decision. I've decided to stand firm on my offer of a $100,000 loan with conditions, but I won't be budging beyond that. If they choose not to accept it, that's on them. The family remains divided, with battle lines clearly drawn. Some relatives have taken Megan's side, flooding my inbox with messages about Christian forgiveness and family duty. Others have reached out privately to support me, sharing their own stories of Megan and Jake taking advantage of their generosity. My boyfriend Alex has been my rock through all of this. We've decided to move forward with our engagement despite the family drama, realizing that we can't put our lives on hold for this situation. He proposed last weekend during a hike to our favorite spot. It was a beautiful private moment, a stark contrast to the family chaos. I'm still struggling with the emotional toll of it all, but I'm trying to focus on the future and the family I'm building with Alex. I'm learning that sometimes setting boundaries and standing up for yourself means being willing to let go of toxic relationships, even if they're family. As for Pop's inheritance, I'm moving forward with my original plans. I've put a down payment on a small commercial property to expand my business. Every time I walk into that space, I think of Pop and how proud he would be. It gives me strength to stand firm in my decision, even as the family pressure continues. Update 3. It's been about 6 weeks since my last update, and things have finally come to a head with my family. 2 weeks ago, I received a formal letter from a lawyer representing Megan and Jake. They were threatening to contest my grandfather's will, claiming he wasn't of sound mind when he made me the primary beneficiary. The letter suggested that Pop had been unduly influenced by me in his final months, implying I had manipulated him into changing his will. I was shocked and hurt that they would stoop so low. Pop had been sharp as a tack until the very end. We had been close, sure, but I would never have tried to influence his decisions about his will. The accusation felt like a slap in the face, not just to me, but to Pop's memory. I immediately contacted a lawyer of my own. She assured me their case was weak, as Pop had been evaluated by a doctor shortly before updating his will. Still, the threat of a legal battle was stressful and upsetting. The idea of having to defend my relationship with Pop in court made me feel sick. My parents called me, urging me to settle with Megan and Jake to avoid a messy court fight. They tried to convince me that giving up the money would be easier than dealing with legal fees and family strife. Mom said, "Just think of how this will look to everyone. Do you want to be known as the girl who sued her own sister?" I refused, telling them I was prepared to defend Pop's wishes in court if necessary. The situation came to a breaking point at a family dinner last weekend. My aunt had organized it in an attempt to mediate between us. She invited my parents, Megan and Jake, and me and Alex. I was hesitant to go, but Alex encouraged me, saying it might be good to clear the air. From the moment we arrived, the tension was palpable. Megan wouldn't even look at me, while Jake seemed to be trying to disappear into his chair. My parents were overly cheerful, clearly trying to pretend everything was normal. We managed to get through appetizers with stilted small talk, but things quickly deteriorated when my aunt brought up the reason for the dinner. Megan accused me of being heartless and selfish, saying I was willing to let her family end up on the street. Jake chimed in, detailing how close they were to losing everything. My parents joined in, bringing up every perceived slight and disappointment from my childhood. Mom dredged up the old shoplifting incident, twisting it to make it sound like Megan had saved me from a life of crime. Dad talked about how they'd always worried about me being able to support myself, implying that my business success was just luck that could run out at any time. I finally snapped, unleashing years of pent-up resentment over their favoritism and lack of support. I told them how hurt I'd been by their constant comparisons, how they'd never believed in me or my dreams. I pointed out how they'd always come running to bail Megan out of every little problem while leaving me to fend for myself. In the heat of the argument, my mom let slip something that changed everything. She mentioned that Pop had told her years ago that he planned to leave me a significant inheritance. Apparently, he'd been concerned about how my parents favored Megan and wanted to ensure I would be taken care of. This revelation stunned everyone into silence. It was clear that my parents had known about the inheritance all along and had been hoping to pressure me into giving it to Megan anyway. Their betrayal cut deep. In that moment, I made a final decision. I announced that I was cutting ties with all of them. I told them I would see them in court if they pursued the legal threat, but otherwise, I wanted no further contact. I left the dinner in tears, with Alex by my side. The past week has been a whirlwind of emotions: grief, anger, relief. I've blocked my parents and Megan on all platforms and asked my aunt to be my point of contact for any necessary family information. Alex and I have decided to move forward with our wedding plans, but we'll be having a small destination ceremony rather than a big family affair. We're thinking about a beach wedding, just us and a few close friends. It's not what I always imagined my wedding would be like, but I'm finding that I'm okay with that. I'm focusing on building a future with Alex and the family we'll create together. We've started talking about kids, something I was always hesitant about given my family history. But Alex helps me believe that we can break the cycle and create a loving, supportive family of our own. As for the inheritance, I'm moving forward with my plans. The commercial property I bought is being renovated, and I'm excited about expanding my business. I've also set up a scholarship fund in Pop's name at the local community college for students pursuing entrepreneurship. It feels like a way to honor his memory and his belief in me. There are still tough days. Sometimes I find myself reaching for the phone to call my mom or share news with Megan, only to remember that's not an option anymore. The loss feels fresh all over again in those moments. But overall, I feel like I'm on the right path. I'm learning to create my own definition of family, one based on love, respect, and mutual support, rather than obligation and guilt. It's not always easy, but I believe it's worth it. And in quiet moments, I like to think that Pop would be proud of me for standing up for myself and honoring his wishes.